Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, the podcast for the prepared. We are here as your hosts, Scott, Shane, and Paris. We're super excited to go through one of the next fundamentals in self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and that is making sure that you have the right tools to be prepared for the events that are coming. So what tools? We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about those. One of the tools we think that you should have is your antibiotic kit from Jase Medical, and have an emergency supply of antibiotics. Now, if you also are taking regular routine medications, you can go to jase.com and look at their daily medicines, because they also have a bunch of just daily medicines that people take all the time, and you can get a supply of those so that you have those when and if, well, not necessarily if, but when stuff happens and pharmacies are not available. One of the funny things that they have, Jase Medical had an ad recently that said, one thing I know for sure is that there's no pharmacies in the wilderness. So if we're bugging out, you're not going to bug out to a pharmacy probably. So you're going to need to have yours and bring yours with you. After you get your Jase Medical, supply, make sure that you do take a few minutes to learn some herbs and natural remedies, because eventually we want to be able to get to the point where we're doing the more natural, God-given medicines. Speaking of good, high-quality nutritional supplements, we definitely want you to recognize we have a great opportunity that we've looked into, and we really are having a great time with it. And it's crazy. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The prices are so good. The opportunity is just one of those ones that I've just can't believe it's really actually happening. So anyways, go check out our landing page at preppertalkradio.com/goodlife. And you'll see some fantastic opportunities there. And we'll be love to have you join us. So without further ado, we're going to get started on the tools that we need to be able to be prepared for any emergency that comes. So Shane, we got some tools. I know Scott showed us this bag. Shane showed the bag. I got a list here myself. Where do we want to start?
Well, preppers are all about tools. I mean, that's kind of where you start. And you kind of have to have the tool before the need, right? At least that's my mindset, is I need to have it before I need it, right? Mm-hmm. We each of us carry, a firearm for a potential future need. It's a tool, is what it is. And that's one of the many tools we'll talk about today. But if I don't have that tool, and I've showed many times what tools I carry on me as well: pocket knife, flashlight, multi-tool, and that's kind of where it starts. EDC, right? Starts with your EDC, and I try to think, okay, what good am I really without the right tools? I have the right knowledge, but ultimately, your hands alone can't do a whole lot. I mean, that's what martial art training is for, right? But can you train it to I mean, you can be a sander. It can sand, right? Your hand can sand with some sandpaper, right? But for, as for wrenches and replacing the different tools, we got to have tools. I don't want to be worldly. I don't want to say, hey, the tools are all important. They're not. It's a skill. But we're talking about the tools today, so that's a fun part.
You can definitely overdo it with tools.
Yeah.
And, there's some solid things you need to have besides your EDC, things like a flashlight, some of the basic tools that most preppers are like, duh, I wouldn't even think of that as a tool, because it's just so part of your everyday life. Mm-hmm. But, multi-tools, pocket knife, flashlights, hands-free, preferably. I know Scott loves the hands-free flashlights. Headlamps, I love those too myself. Like anything that I can get at, just if I can get my hands to be able to work and have everything working around me. And so there's a ton of different tools for just every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shane hit on the primary two that everyone should have, right? A pew and a slice through, right? We all need these, right? Those are the first two you should carry on yourself. Obviously, your keys, your wallet, some cash, possibly some gold and silver in there. Those are like the daily essentials. And then you can get a little bit more exciting after that, and with multi-tools, pliers, things like that. But when I think about this, I think, first of all, like gardening, home maintenance, repair, all those things. When I start thinking about tools, that's where I start going. And I have my favorite thing to do is I go to yard sales all over the place, and I get redundancy tools like crazy.
Yeah, kind of like we talked about in our first episode of the 10 different foundations of self-reliance. Is I've kind of based my list on that. Is, having financial tools, community, water, food production, hunt, fish, forage, food preservation. I have another category called tools based on your skills. So more specific type tools. Alternative energy is one of the foundations of self-reliance. And so you got to have the right tools and knowledge as well, and supplies, for alternative energy, and then defense protection, kind of like as Scott led out with, which is definitely on the top of my list as well. Obviously, part of our EDC, our everyday carry, is being responsible for ourselves and our families and to be able to defend them wherever we go.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody at church the other day, and it was an activity actually that, with our congregation, and they were like, we were talking about guns, and I was like, yeah, if you see me outside of my house, I'm carrying, so if you see a situation that needs somebody to, approach, take care of it, and the 911 is a little far out, and I'm right there, let's talk about it, see what we can do.
But
let
me guess, somewhere a little surprised.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
Taken back.
Well, you're not supposed to, in our religion, or their policies, you're not supposed to have sidearms in church.
In the building, yeah.
What's that?
In the building, yeah.
Yep, not in the building. So, agency is awesome, but most of the time, I follow that pretty much, some percentage of any percentage of none. And so the thing is like, you never know where you're going to be or what's going to happen where you are. Like, there's too many variables. And so it's always just smarter to carry. It's always just smarter to be prepared. And I'm not as good at being locked and loaded at home as Shane is. I know Shane likes to pop it in his pajamas and run around the house. In all cases and scenarios, he's armed.
The only time I'm in my pajamas is when I'm in the bed. Get out of the bed, I'm dressed, everything's on, and then to the very last minute when I get in bed, everything's on me.
See, there you go. And I have a few placed strategically throughout the house, but that creates a problem, right? Because then if someone gets in and I'm not at one of those, I've got to fight to get to that location. So depending on what I'm wearing, I may or may not have it on me, but that goes to each person. Like, what's your plan? How are you going to defend yourself? What do you have to help defend yourself? Like, in a random everyday occurrence, you never know if someone's going to try to break into your house.
Well, and if you think about, again, looking to the past, if you were in a rural area, you probably had a rifle or shotgun in the back seat of your car, hanging in the window. If you're out in the field doing your chores, maybe you have it on your horse or slung over your shoulder. Obviously, rifle's far more effective, and depends on where you're at, right? Are the tools that you carry.
Yeah, and it just makes sense, right? Because you have no cover, especially like my grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, they were working the field. So typically the great-great-great-grandfather, whoever the man was, carried a rifle with him everywhere he went, right? I had a great-great-grandfather who was a lawman, and so he carried 2 pistols and a rifle everywhere he went.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And he ended up becoming a judge, and then he had other problems he had to deal with. But like, it was ridiculous in those times to not carry. And we fast forward to our time, and I just shared this on TikTok. We let the generations before us piss away all of our rights and say, oh, no, we'll just pay the police to take care of everything, and we don't need a gun anymore. Oh, we'll just pay the government to take care of this, and so we don't need security anymore. And now we don't have it in a lot of places, right? That right's been stripped. And so you've got to take those responsibilities back in your own hands. And wherever you go, be prepared for whatever you need to be prepared for.
And if we go down the list, kind of like I had opened with, and I had some thoughts about, obviously the first priority in self-reliance is financial self-reliance. What kind of tools do you guys picture having as as your in your financial go bag, right? What kind of tools? Obviously, knowledge that's important, right? Having a coach, but what kind of tools do you think might apply to financial tools?
First tool is financial budgeting, planning, understanding what's coming in and where it's going. And this is where you guys can go talk to Paris and get really
So
good.
the spreadsheet is your tool.
But yeah, I use I have the food storage calculator that I created that's available on our website preppertalkradio.com. I use that, but I also use a similar version, our family budget document, that we track what's coming in, what's going out, when it's going out, and if anything changes, we have to talk about it before it gets changed. Like, oh, we're going to add this in. Are we though? Do we really need to spend that money? But that tells us kind of what we're doing with our money. But then also we have our plans, we have separate accounts, and even cash on hand that we're putting in place so that in this case of emergency we do this, or if we want to save it for a vacation, save it for something else, like those funds don't get messed with.
Yeah, so to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, I think a checking account is good to have as a tool. Savings accounts, sinking funds, where you have a savings account for certain things. Maybe even have 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 savings accounts, and they're all for specific things like Christmas, birthdays, prepping. Tool, the next tool.
Do you use like QuickBooks for your family, or just how do you do that?
Again, I just keep all that on my spreadsheet, and I have bank accounts for different things, and that I track those. It's not. There's other tools that you can use, like home equity lines of credit can be a tool that you can use strategically. You can use life insurance as a tool and strategies there too. Obviously, tools are also going to be things like health insurance, car insurance. You don't want to get into an accident and have the wrong thing. So those are tools financially. I think other just outside of that, more like anything that you can use to barter or exchange could be considered a financial tool. Like if you have a bunch of cans of whatever that you're set aside for bartering, or maybe you bought a bunch of cigarettes, alcohol, condoms, whatever, so that you can have those to barter. Those would be things that would be under that category of like a monetary exchange, a method of exchange. Gold and silver, having a bunch of gold and silver in my safe. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. So it's nice to think about having gold ETFs or gold mutual funds, but I wouldn't. I mean, if you want to put your money there, that's fine. And but I'm putting my money in tangibles. So brass is
also
another
what I'm
special
kind of getting at is pen and paper, notebook.
Yeah, I do. I have an app that I recommend for folks who want to do apps, but spreadsheet to me is really good. But again, if the grid goes down, you have no power.
And then another tool would be your power bank, right? Your solar power, which we can get into when you get to alternative energy and so forth. But yeah, I'm definitely old school. I do it on pen and paper every single month. And that's the way I've always done it. I'll continue. I keep thinking, man, I just got to put this on a spreadsheet. It'd be so much easier, right? But no, I just do it by hand. Like I always balance my checkbook, right? When you had your checkbook, you had your paper pad, and you write your checks down and you balance it against your paper statement, which you got in the mail. And so that's the way I still do it.
Oh, wow.
I know there's easier ways to do it and faster ways, more accurate ways, right? But when the power goes down, I mean, I won't have access to my money anyway, right? My bank account anyway, right? So
yes, I mean, cash, dollar bills is a good thing to have on hand as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also add to that, if we're looking at total toolkit, a rider on your insurance policy for disability. Because if you become disabled, having illnesses, terminal illness, disability, even a short-term illness, like you've got different things you can add that will pay out in those situations. Man, those are so valuable, and it doesn't cost that much money. And until the apocalypse happens, it's something you can use. And once the apocalypse happens, you're not paying for it anymore. It's gone, just like everything else. Right. Then you better have your Jase case and your Nicole Lepellian book. Herbal remedies,
and know how to forage.
Amen to that.
And
so our number 2 is participating in a community of like-minded people. trying to think of what tools apply to community, is maybe a little more challenging than financial tools. But I was thinking, have some implements, some tools that could be shared or could be share with the community, that you're willing to share, that you're willing to let the community know that you have, that you're not afraid to lend or to, what are you doing there, Scott?
Community tools.
Scott's got some
My
tools.
binoculars, my
Okay,
radio.
those are community. That makes sense.
Our whole community has
binoculars.
these. It's awesome. We all have our network for our church, in our neighborhood, like our cities. Like we have emergency preparedness groups, and I'm one of the coordinators. And so like we all have these radios tuned to the same frequency. So if something does happen, we can communicate. And then I also have my binoculars because we're high on the hill, so that I can let people know what's going on around me, and they can't see it, but I can then hop on the radio and tell them, right? It's community.
And then your drone is your new tool to be able to see where the zombies are coming from.
Problem with this, I'm a terrible pilot.
You just need practice, dude. I know. The first time I pulled one out, I've crashed way too many times.
I'm on my third set of rotors. I've broken these, and thankfully they're easy to pop on. They're cheap to replace, but yeah, trees are not my friend. But yeah, I'm learning. I got to fly higher so I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, it's a great community tool.
That's true. Yeah, just to monitor and see what's going on without leaving the comfort of your own home or neighborhood. Yeah.
I think some other tools that might be good is more along the skill set side of things, but the ability to have leadership, communication, really understanding like what are the problems. I think a tool would be good in a community to it would be like a sheet of who has what and or who's got what health concerns or questions. So for example, a tool would be good. A good tool to me would be like a roster. Okay, who in my next door neighbor just moved in, and she's a nurse. And I was like, you're going to be one of the tools that we're going to use in the community in case anything happens, because we need nurses. So knowing who, and her husband's a plumber. So I'm like, bro, we got some tools here, that we can use as people who have the skill sets that are going to be skill sets that we need and would use in a community situation like that. Construction, electricians, all that. You just have a list of who can do what. Yeah. And even have a list of, like you said, Shane, what are you, so I was in a group and they said, in the event of an emergency, what are you willing to share or provide as something for your community? And people were like, I'm not telling anybody what I'm, no, he says, no, that's not what this thread is for. This thread is, what are you willing to share and give and bring to bear to help the neighborhood?
Think of it.
If you're not willing to, just don't get triggered by the comment, by the thread here. What are you willing to? So I think that'd be a good tool to have a list of everybody's, resources.
Right. I've got a really good library, and there's certain books that I'll be allowed to check out. There's certain books that I'm like, no, nobody touches that. You can come read it at my house, but it does not leave with you. I've got a huge stack of 1980s, 1970s DIY books, how to fix things, plumbing book, those types of books. I'll lend those out. Roofing, all that other fun stuff. Like I'll lend those out. Basic electrician book, I'll lend that out. But like my survival books, no. My educational books for my kids, they'll stay in the home. Like, but yeah, absolutely skills. That's good to know. But you also have to be careful. Like if you share too much, if you don't trust that group or network, you shouldn't share anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So number 3 on the list is to keep a supply of clean water. And I think that's pretty clear, straightforward. What that initially means is having water filters, ways to purify water, having a way to store and to carry or to move water, because I don't have a water source immediately in my own home. It's a couple of miles away, but I do have a means of getting it. Like for example, I know I've shared this before. I've got an enclosed trailer, a couple of 250-gallon totes, and a 2-inch Honda water pump. So that's my quick and dirty run to the river and fill those things up and get them up to the neighborhood. And of course, being that that obvious, it's going to draw attention with my neighbors, and I'll probably have to make multiple trips. But that's something that I've kind of decided. Okay, this is my contribution, right? So, in addition to personal water filters, the RH2Go we talk about all the time, which a water purification device creates chlorine, and iodine. There's a lot of different ways that we talk about it, purifying water and filtering water.
Yeah, I
So-
think like for those who don't have a trailer, for those who are looking for a lighter way to transport water, like I've tested this out. This is a dry bag. It works really well as a water bag too. I can carry 2.5 gallons in this thing, and it's got this nice little roll up handle so it doesn't leak out. And I can attach that with a carabiner to my backpack. Like I've got a couple of those in the car, and you can get them over at survivalfrog.com. Use the code PrepperTalk, the number 10, PrepperTalk 10, and you can save some money on that. But yeah, water catchment, water transport, water purification, and water containment. Like where are you going to keep your clean water, and where are you going to let your gray water go? Because the other problem is your plumbing is going to back up at some point if you're on a city. There's not going to be enough water flow going through to keep it cleared, and the system's going to back up.
So sanitation is a clear part of what tools for sanitation too is another
That's
part
true.
of that.
Absolutely goes
You
right
don't
along
want
with
to have. I think disease is going to be one of the biggest problems, and having a good sanitation is what can help.
Big time.
Absolutely. Moving along. Number 4 is producing your own food. And this is a huge topic. We're just trying to skim across here, talk about some of the basic tools, implements you'd need to fulfill this number 6, equipping ourselves with the right tools for the 10 different foundations of self-reliance. Number 4 being food production. And I think it's pretty obvious, right off the bat, hand tools. Having hand tools, it's awfully nice to have a little tractor. Would obviously be nice. Not practical for a lot of people, but if you don't at least have a shovel and a rake and some basic yard tools, you're going to have a hard time getting the seed in the ground. And I think as most homeowners who take care of the yards, that should be pretty standard tools to have around your house. But the question is, how many of each? We talk about redundancy a lot. 2 is 1, 1 is none. And do you have quality tools? Are they going to last for years? Are you going to be able to repair them? These are all things that I consider when at home as a homeowner as well. We do a lot of home maintenance. Scott, Parrish, I know you guys, we talk about this all the time. Having those kinds of tools for home maintenance, also applies. And of course, yard work.
Yeah, and to go along with that, like the tools, like we went and bought a bunch of tools, about 5 years ago. We're like, we only have one of these standard spade shovels. Let's get another one, right? And we were just like, we were thinking budget at the time. Bad idea. We bought all these tools, and I'll throw shade. Lowe's, we bought some of your blue hand tools, right? The wood on every one of those tools snapped within a few years. So my shovel that I use primarily just for digging trenches, tilling the garden, like all that fun stuff, the wood snapped. Both my rakes that I bought at Lowe's, the wood snapped. They don't
You're
treat
just too
the wood.
strong, Scott. You just
apparently I'm this big formidable beast and I can't be contained. But that's my appetite. But no, really, like they were just not good. I broke some, my wife broke some, my kids broke one. Like they just didn't last. And what's funny is the stuff that we've gotten at garage sales and that I've collected over the years, that stuff lasts. And the difference in the wood is instead of having this like shiny sheen finish on the outside, it's just oil rubbed, and it keeps the wood stronger. And they just lasted tons longer. All the new stuff doesn't last.
Interesting.
Yeah, I tend to go with fiberglass, but the problem can be it could be difficult to repair. because you can break
Yeah.
fiberglass, handled shovel or implement as well.
Been there, done
And
that.
with wood, it can be more easily replaced and repaired. But they tend to be more durable if you take care of it, right? If you're not
Well, if you get
overdoing it.
another thing I was thinking is if you get a rake that's metal, because they have a lot of these rakes that are plastic now.
Like
Mhm.
leaf rakes, yeah, I stay
Yeah,
away
leaf rakes that are plastic. If you get one that's metal, you can probably, if the handle breaks, you can do a little bit of, you got to do a little recon in the forest, but you might find a stick that you could whittle down and create as the new handle.
Mhm.
So if you have a good head on your shovel, a good head on your rake, it's going to last. Those handles become less important because you can find a good stick. I actually have I actually have a broom that the handle broke, and I ghetto rigged a piece of PVC, like a strong,
Yeah,
thicker
there you go.
PVC, and so my PVC pipe is now the handle for that broom, and so it's a push broom, so it's not like it's a dust, it's a bigger broom, and so it needs a solid handle, but I've been using that for
So
6 or 7 years.
I bought a nice big draw knife for that reason, so I can shape handles,
Mm-hmm.
like a nice big two-handed draw knife.
Oh,
And
nice.
I've only used it once just to test it out, make sure I know how to use it. But man, those things are great. But it's a tool that, like, if I've got to reshape a handle or reshape, a log cabin, like build a log cabin, like it's one of the tools that I'd use for that. But it works really, really well, and it simplifies the process. But
Yeah,
then you
really.
also have to make sure for your axes, for your saws, for your pickaxe, and all those things. Like, you got to make sure you've got a good way to keep those sharp, a good sanding block or sanding file system. Those are tools that I think a lot of people will forget when they get these tools, because like, oh, I got a tool. Okay, how are you going to maintain that tool? Do you have the right oils? Do you have the right cleaners? Do you have a way to keep the things that are sharp? Because if you don't, then they're not going to last.
And also thinking about around those same lines is knives in particular,
Mhm.
paring knives, carving knives, filleting knives, butchering knives, because part of food production is also like we talk about
Utensils.
uh, utensils, but also just knowing how to process your own animals and having the right knives for that. Because sure, you could do that with a kitchen knife, your steak knife, right? Yeah, but it would be so much easier, so much better with the appropriate knife, like you say,
Mhm.
with the appropriate edge, Scott, and being able to sharpen that, and just having the right tools always makes a difference in every aspect. And we talk
Oh, yeah.
talk a little bit about automotive as well. We'll get to that. But if you don't have the right tools, you're just not going to get the job done. A lot of times you can muddle through, but when it becomes specific, you really have to have the right tools. Gardening may be an exception in certain, but the right tools always make it easier. And me getting in my older age, I just don't have the time or the desire to work any harder than I have to. Let me put it that way, right?
Well, I think
So
another tool for gardening is how to distribute the water and irrigation
okay,
tools.
yeah,
So hoses potentially. I don't know what they did back in the 1800s
buckets.
to get the fields filled with water when there was no rain, but that's something that's important to maybe have some way to
Traditional
get the.
irrigation methods where they'd have a little
Trench.
canal, and then they'd have ditches off the canal, and then they'd open up a section, let the water run down a few lines of your garden, your field,
Mhm. But
close it
then
off, open the next section.
you have to maintain those as well. So again,
Mm-hmm.
good shovels and all different kinds of shovels. There's scoop shovel, there's spade, there's flat, um, the trenching shovel, all different kinds of tools. And if you're not out there using them right now, you don't know what you need, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to justify, hey, I'm going to go buy all these different shovels. I don't know what I'm going to need in the future. But if you're doing it now, you'll know what you need. And obviously, depends on where you're at. If you're in an urban area, you probably have no garden, no space whatsoever, or very little. Uh, so you may just have some hand tools. But if you're a homesteader out in the country, you're probably going to have a tractor. You're going to have something like I have a little walk behind tractor. Nothing too big. I would love to have a driving tractor, but because it's you've got a larger field to mow and to till and so forth, which again, as I'm getting up there in age, I do not want to do this by hand. trying to dig up sod and get down to good soil to plant a garden is extremely hard work. So again, having
Yeah,
the
no
right
thanks.
yeah, very, very difficult, especially for us who live in suburban areas who probably hire somebody to mow our lawn, right? So
What's that like?
yeah,
I
no,
don't
I've
know.
never done that.
I have the local. I have one of the local teenagers do it for me. He's
Yeah, I figured.
You've got
he does a
you've
good
got a
job.
high school kid. How come he's not doing it? Both of you have a high school kid.
I know,
Man,
I did too.
Yeah,
It's hard for me to get him to get out there in the yard with me.
sometimes it's
good
easier to just
indentured
let the
servants.
people who want to do it.
It's
Yeah,
true.
exactly. Give them pay them what they're worth. Yeah, especially as a kid. I mean, that's what I did when I was a kid. Mowed lawns.
Yep, that's the only way I can make money. That and a paper route.
Yeah, paper route. Exactly.
What do
All
we
right,
got
then
next?
moving on to number 5: hunting, fishing, and foraging for food. Tools. Again, first thing that comes to mind is knives of all different kinds, specific to whatever task you need to do. For foraging, that can be pretty simple, but and again, processing game. If you're a hunter and you know how to do that, having certain knives, and of course other tools, rifles and so forth to that are appropriate, that work. That it's not going to be good to shoot a turkey with a 30-30, right? If that's all you've got, a 30-30, you're hunting turkey. That's not going to work out very well.
So I
You're not
love
gonna have
the
much turkey
Wilderness
left.
Survival Merit
Yeah.
Badge as a kid. And the Wilderness Survival Merit Badge, they teach you how to make snares. Now, in normal times, they're not legal in all places. However, in a survival situation, you do you. And I love making snares, practicing building snares. It's quiet. You just check your trap lines, and
It's
that's
passive.
a more passive way to find food, right? Let it come to you. Learn how to track, learn how to identify different game trails. But I've done that on campouts and places we've been allowed to. Wild hens, they're a little gamey, but they eat good, right? Also knowing how to fish and knowing how to do fish traps, very, very beneficial.
Know how to tie your own flies, have some
Mhm.
fly tying supplies and such. Make your own lures as well. That's something my son is dabbling into and making lures for
That's
us.
cool.
Because at some point, I mean, you go buy a $10 lure and a few casts, you could lose it, right? That's kind of in our luck is, going through a couple of lures every fishing trip. And so at some point, you could be out of lures and no way to get your food. But so knowing how to improvise lures, because there's a lot of ways you can do that, just with stuff you find around as well. But like you say, Scott, with traps and snares, it's definitely best to have those already made. You can definitely scrounge it up, but if you can make it and test it, you're going to be so much better off. And it's next to impossible. If you don't know what you're doing, it's next to impossible to really catch something in a snare. You could get lucky.
Well, the
But
biggest thing is knowing where the animals are going to be, because most people you can watch a video now and figure out how to build a snare, right? You can read the Scout handbook and be like, I can build a snare. But if you don't put it in the right place, it's never going to catch anything. It's like, hey guys, look at the snare I built. Why is it in the middle of a rock field with no tracks anywhere? I don't know. It's where I am. Go somewhere where there's food, right? But yeah, I have live catch baskets, and I've also got a series of 8 different snares that are metal snares that I bought years ago, just because I wanted to make sure I had better stuff for larger game. But the only
I think another cool thing to make sure you have is like a small hatchet or maybe a machete, because if you're going to be foraging a little bit, you kind of got to. Sometimes you may have to go through some bushes or some little bit more brush. I think it would be good to have a little more of a machete that kind of chop away some stuff to get you through. That might be something to think about. I think I have a couple of different knives. I have a kukri, sorry.
Me too. I love mine.
And a couple other things like that are really good. I was in a knife phase. You know how women do their shoes. I did the knife
we all
thing.
do. We all do.
I bought way too many.
We all get addicted to knives.
I think I have a knife for everybody in my family and extended family and my neighborhood. Anyways, so I bought some different styles, of course, of different styles of machetes, and I found some that I really like that are good. So I think that's something to have.
But see, that can also be used in the final category, defense, self-defense too, as well. It could be used as a weapon. And I definitely try and orient to whatever I buy to have multiple purposes, right? And that's a much better value, and you also are doubling up on the possibilities, having backups that maybe they do something well and something else not very well, right?
So
A fighting knife is probably not very good to be bushwhacking with, right?
Oh no, you want that to be
Chopping
sharp.
with, right?
I would also say we've kind of skipped over this, but guys, really good first aid kit. When you think about your hunting, trapping, and self-defense areas, really like you want Israeli gauze, you want Israeli bandages. Sorry, you want gauze, you want blood clotting, like you want tourniquets, and suture systems, suture kits. Like we've got staplers, we've got those little butterfly sutures, we've got a whole crap ton of that. And even going back to like the community tools, like we bought a few survival buckets of first aid stuff. And we actually just got a new link on our website. If you guys go to our resources, you can find our first aid link. You guys can get some really good stuff there from Mountain Man First Aid. Mountain Man Medical, I think is what it is.
Mountain Man Medical.
Yeah.
Triple
But yeah, go get that, because that's another thing you need to have on hand when you go do these things, because you never know what could happen.
Okay, we're going to need to get moving on. We're going to run out of time here. Try and cover the rest of these. So the next one is food preservation. Going on along with hunting, fishing, and foraging and gardening is knowing how to preserve your food and having the tools to do that as well, which simply can be bottles or cans, number 10 cans, but also having your pressure canners, your water bath canners, the lids, like Scott's showing there in front, and knowing how to do it there. That's a cool little tool. Mylar bags with the ability to seal those and oxygen absorbers, which are very hard to keep for a long time, right?
Maybe a freeze dryer.
Dehydrators, freeze dryers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think another tool for preservation would be like having the spices or the ingredients. For example, salt. Salt is a great preserver of food. So do you have your salt on hand? And add, I would say, have salt for your everyday just meals, but then also have salt for food preservation. So you basically have a supply of salt for two separate things. And so that's something that I think is important to think about.
Amen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. The next topic I have here is tools based on skills. And we'll try and hit this really quickly. And we brushed on that lightly. So and Paris also mentioned this too, is if you're a plumber, you should have plumbing specific tools. If you're an electrician, and also it goes along with number 8, our alternative energy sources is being self-reliant in energy, also knowing how to do it yourself. I think that's very important when it comes to solar, when it comes to wind, having alternative energy, knowing how to do that yourself and having the right tools. It doesn't take a lot, but that is more of the electrician focused type tools, and having the knowledge and the manuals, the books, the information to where you can do that properly without hurting yourself, and knowing how to troubleshoot as well when we don't have internet. And so those trade specific, like welding, for example. Do you have a welder? I've got a very simple flux core welder that is just meant for the odd project here and there. I'm a no good welder, but I can fix, a chair, a metal chair in a pinch, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think potentially that could lead to being able to be more handy at fixing things when that's our only option. You can't buy it, you got to fix it, you got to repurpose it, and having a little bit of skill and having those tools already on hand. And we could go get more specific into woodwork. Do you have or splitting wood, your firewood? Do you have a chainsaw? Do you have a log splitter, or at least an axe or a maul to split your wood? That's very critical, obviously, to be able to heat and to cook off the grid. Those kind of tools, having a saw, obviously a saw. I mean, that's a no-brainer, a really good quality saw, or multiple saws, and we talk about those all the time, the silky saws and such. But very specific type trade tools like that, which of course that just goes to your own personality, your own hobbies and so forth. I think really can prove to be very valuable in a grid down or in a SHTF situation, and you
And
can
just
provide a lot of value yourself for your skills.
to throw it in there, mechanics tools. Like, do you have a set
Absolutely.
of all the nuts and bolts and wrenches and sockets, and do you have a bunch of those? Because I mean, when one thing that I don't want to do anything by hand if I don't have to either. However, I recognize that should get a tool like that old grinder drill that your hand grinder drill. Like,
Mhm.
what if you don't have the battery, or if of your power drill, you got to have a drill too. And so maybe not have multiples of that, but maybe have a drill where you got 2 or 3 batteries so that you can have them charging, because things aren't going to charge as fast when you have a solar thing, or when you have solar energy as your charging device. Charges fast when you plug it into your house, but it's not going to charge as fast. You're going to want to have more, I think, backups at that point. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, whatever your skill set's going to be, if you're going to be a nurse, you want to have a really more robust set of first aid stuff. Maybe you're a doula. Do you have the maternity stuff to be able to give birth and be there for that type of situation? Are you a dentist? Do you know how to have? I mean, Shane, you've got that whole dental
Yeah.
kit.
Scares the
Yeah.
heck out of me. So scary. I'll give it definitely. That's a community oriented prep there. That can go to whoever's willing.
Yeah,
So
for real.
if
Here,
the
I got
apocalypse
the
happens,
tools. I don't
and we
have the
come-
skill set yet, but I got the tools.
if
Yeah,
the apocalypse
exactly.
happens and we come running across Shane, and it's been a few years, and he smiles at us, and it's less teeth than now, that means he got over his fear and either did
did
something
it.
right or did something terribly wrong.
Fortunately, I have good teeth. I'm very, very grateful for
blessing.
that. But yeah, hand tools in particular. I love rechargeable batteries, and DeWalt's kind of my brand. And tried to get everything cordless, because batteries they'll last. Yeah, they'll you've got a good 10+ year life on these new lithium ion batteries, so it's very reliable. I think it's a really great source, and it has a lot of purposes. You can have 4 or 5 batteries and dozens of tools, and you can accomplish a lot with very little, and especially being cordless. But also having the backup hand saw, like you say, the hand drill, Paris, and
Yeah.
having a hand planer, those types of basic tools will get you a long, long ways. And if I have to learn them when it's SHTF and it's in a pinch, so be it, right? I'll use my power tools for now, but it's a great place to start with the power tools and the convenience of that way. And when the batteries no longer recharge, or the tool gets damaged, you have your backup hand tools.
Amen to that.
So then really after that, we talk about alternative energy a little bit, solar, knowing how to configure batteries, knowing how to wire solar panels, and having the right tools and connectors. Those are very specific tools, and they're not very expensive, and it's a great way to start. Start and build your own little power bank, and you'll understand what tools you need. If that's where you want to go. If you want, we can definitely live without power. But then you
And
won't be able to recharge your DeWalt batteries.
You can even go the gas route, right? You can store
Yeah,
regular gas only so long, but then you can look at natural gas. You can also look at propane, which is amazing, or you can create your own biogas system. And that's what I'm looking at. I think that is probably the longest, most sustainable method. And so when I move, that's one of the things I want to really get into is create my own biogas.
Or
Because you can use that.
be able to refine used motor oil as well for diesel.
Yeah.
For diesel fuel and such. So very specific tools that you need to get into right now if that's your interest.
Yeah.
I think there's very little time to get what you need before you're actually going to need it. Otherwise, we all do without, right? And that's a very real option as well, as doing without. But when it comes down to critical items, critical tools, like the last one on our list, self-defense, I don't think that you can really go without that if you intend to survive. It's really that critical for me and my family to be able to defend my family and teach my kids how to shoot. And they do know how to shoot. They're very good, and they're very comfortable around firearms, and they each have their own. And as they get older, they get new, they get something more appropriate. And for me, that's, number 4 on our survival list. You got shelter, water, food, and protection. and that includes the tools needed for self-defense as well as hunting. I mean, they're multi-purpose type tools, right? So that is, and of course, again, knives, even swords, right? When you run out of bullets, how are you going to defend yourself, right?
Katana, bro. Have you
Exactly,
seen
or a
who
short
Shoshone?
sword.
Isn't that girl on the Walking Dead? Shoshone, is that her name?
I don't watch the show. I have
don't
no
even
idea.
know.
Oh, I watched it years ago, and she had a katana, dude, and she would
Mhm.
chop freaking heads, bro. Like
Yeah,
she was an inspiration. I was like, you know what? I want a sword. I want a
that's a
sword to
weird
chop
inspiration
zombie
there,
heads.
Paris.
There you go.
Anyway, so I think, yeah, we're out of time, but I think ending with one of the most important, obviously you got to feed yourself. You got to be able to defend your tools. So I'd say don't underestimate the importance of self-defense tools.
Amen. Hallelujah. Well, brethren, thanks so much for being on the show with us. And guys who are listening, thank you for listening. Thanks for being a part of the show. You've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded. If you'd like to know more about some of the stuff that we're doing, the projects we're working on, go to preppertalkradio.com/good life and learn a little bit more about this opportunity that we're a part of and we're really promoting. And make sure that when you do go to Jase Medical or jase.com, I forgot to say it at the start of the show, but use code PrepperTalk to get $10 off your order. Make sure you use code PrepperTalk. That way it gets credit to the show, and you guys can get a discount. So thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
See you next week.